since 1996. Since 1996, he has co-currently held the post of Consulting Associate Professor in the Stanford University School of Engineering. He has additionally served as the Executive Director of Stanford Center for Engineering since 1998. Dr. Desher serves as the advisor to the International Business Incubator since 1997 and the U.S.-Japan Business Incubation Center since 2000. Dr. Desher maintains an active private consulting practice in international business strategy and technology trend and opportunity analysis and Japan market entry and performance. He has been a member of the International Advisory Committee to the Japanese government in regard to the creation of the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. From April 2004, he joined the Board of Trustees of Seoul University. And most importantly, I would say most important, he's the advisor, key advisor to these. Please welcome Tom.
Thanks everybody, and welcome to Stanford University. Since they pay my paycheck, right, I can say welcome. And I'm very happy to see many institutions represented. Who's from South Africa? Very nice of you to be in this group studying about Asian entrepreneurship and seeing people from Zhejiang. Where are people from Zhejiang? Yeah. So you're with me. Yeah. I was there not too long ago. And actually I just visited IIT Madras last summer. I don't think you saw me because I only had a couple of short meetings there. I didn't get to go to IIT Delhi, but where's IIT Delhi? Okay. And very good to see everyone here from KAIST. I used to have a joint grant with KAIST. For 3 years, we worked together to talk about entrepreneurship programs. And I'm very happy that you can be here at a rather difficult time in the world economy. And for the welcome speech today, I thought we'd look a little bit at Asia entrepreneurship during the economic crisis. So first of all, I want to talk a bit about the general background of the crash. What does this mean for Asia's role in the world economy? I'd like to reconsider what we're talking about when we talk about entrepreneurship. Then I think we should talk about conditions in selected Asian countries for entrepreneurship. And finally, one slide about outlook, which leads into discussion outlook. So, this is not a pretty graph, right? Notice that China was growing at 9 or 10% a year up until the fourth quarter. And then the most recent average growth that they estimate now for the fourth quarter was 6.5%. The U.S., Japan very severely, the European area all went negative in terms of the growth of the economy. Asia, except for Japan and China, is kind of right on the borderline, doesn't even show up. So the first question that comes to mind is, what happens next? Does this get a lot worse? Or is it possible that since Asia is growing, has been growing quite well, if you leave out Japan, then perhaps we will look to Asia to lead us out of this recession? What do you think? It's a good question. I think to understand what's going on, though, we should look back to what happened right before the crash. Asia was an engine of world economic growth. It was especially interesting to business people everywhere because of a young, new middle class. People who spent money in ways that their parents didn't get to spend money. There were early adopters, of new technologies and products. Very interesting group of people, especially in India and in China. And Asia had also become the crossroads of a world-scale supply chain. You're seeing a lot of components that are made in other Asian countries being assembled in China and shipped out to the European Union, Japan, and the United States. You're also seeing a few things that are components made in China going out to other parts of Asia and then being shipped from there to advanced markets. But as this worldwide supply chain, Asia has relied a great deal on exports as well as on increase in domestic consumption. So how did things look? the World Bank database, most recent one is 2007. You can calculate by the traditional method, or you can calculate by this purchase power parity method, what your money will actually buy for you. And in the traditional method of calculating the size of the economy, the world economy was worth about $54 trillion in 2007. The U.S. had 13.8 trillion of that. And that number is the same because that's used as the basis for calculating the purchase power parity. In the second largest economy in the world is Japan by the traditional method. But by the purchase power parity method, it's already down to number 3. And China and India are the ones where you see a dramatic difference based on the two ways of calculating the economy. 3.3 trillion versus 7 trillion. And 1.2 trillion versus 3 trillion. So what's happening is because prices are still low in India and China, the money that's produced there goes even further. And so what did people expect to happen? This is also from the year 2007. They expected China and India to be going in a rapidly upward direction, while the U.S. is not doing too bad, and Asia and the EU are just kind of there, right? So everybody's interested in India and China. But what you see is you see a wild fluctuation in consumer confidence over the last year. But more importantly, I want you to pay attention to the blue line. The blue line, which corresponds to the left-hand scale? No, the right-hand scale, excuse me. The right-hand scale for increase in sales of large retailers. Up through the last quarter of 2008, even though you see this drastic drop, at the end of the year was still 12% year on year. Now, the average growth rate in the fourth quarter of the entire economy was 6.5%. But domestic consumption is 12%, at least as regard to the large retailers. What does that mean? It means the exports have fallen through the floor. But it also means that consumption is an interesting phenomenon that might continue and might actually help us get out of this. This is just a slide that shows Asia's growth as a supply chain. Notice that the Asian exports inside Asia is about half the size of all Asian exports combined. So what you're seeing is you're seeing an increase in intra-Asia trade as well as an increase in Asia exports to the rest of the world. But this means that the economies of all the world are very heavily linked to each other. It means that if the United States sneezes, maybe Asia catches a cold, right? No joke. And what will happen after this is a real, kind of matter of concern. In the fourth quarter, Chinese trade volumes went down dramatically. And they look even worse in other places. Auto exports from Japan are down by 92% in the first quarter of this year. I just heard that this weekend. So we're really seeing things ugly. Are we on the edge of an even sharper cliff? Does it go on from here? What happens? What do we really have to worry about? The first thing is protectionism. In a bad economic situation, politicians will always pay attention to the people who vote for them. And so the rise of protectionism will not be a surprise at all. The G20 met in November to talk about avoiding protectionist measures, and since then 17 out of 20 countries have implemented measures that you might call protectionist. So this is a matter of concern. And the same thing is, can the consumption in places like India and China be sufficient to avoid